Hey, Leonardtown Middle School staff. There were a lot of questions today about what is my day gonna look like on that first week of school? Like, when am I supposed to get in and do the synchronous learning with my students? What does the expectation look like for that? So you'll see, first thing that you have pulled up here in front of you, and I hope you can see it, is the Leonardtown Middle School bell schedule. What the admin team and what teachers have been telling parents at the distribution days is that we're going to be following our school schedule as closely as possible. So this is not going to look any different from years past. It's not going to look any different from what's posted on the Leonardtown Middle School website. You'll see homeroom starts at 7:20 and ends at 7:37 a.m. Period 1 from 7:37 to 8:22 a.m. Period 2 from 8:26 to 9:11 a.m. And it goes all the way to the end of the day with period 8 being at 2:05 p.m. Now I know what you're thinking. You're like, what? The students are going to wake up and they're going to follow their schedule starting, at 7:20 a.m. in the morning? Yeah, that's our hope, is that they will, because this is not a long-term plan. This is only supposed to take us through October during that whole first quarter, and then we're supposed to start transitioning back into the school building. So again, we want our students to feel as much of the routine as possible now, so that way when they transition back into the building, it'll feel normalized to them. So it's going to be a big shakeup for some of them that have been sleeping in until noon every day. We get it. But if we don't adjust now, we're going to be adjusting in October, so I'd rather them get started with it now. So homeroom is going to start at 7:20, and then they're going to work through the rest of the periods throughout the day. Now, as far as the synchronous versus asynchronous, we have talked about a couple of different ideas, and I think that we came to a solution that we felt was going to be manageable for both teachers, parents, and students. So let's talk about it. What I'm going to show you next, I don't want to overwhelm you. I'm going to try and break it down piece by piece, but I'm going to show you a sample student schedule for what synchronous learning will look like for them. So synchronous can be a number of different things, but I think the thing that most people associate it with is that kind of live Google Meet or that live recording. You should be checking in with your students every day at the beginning of every class period, but that checking in does not have to be live. That asynchronous check-in might be an email, it might be them completing a warm-up, it could look like a variety of different things, and we're going to talk about that in your department and PLC and team meetings throughout the week. But to give you an idea of what the synchronous versus asynchronous schedule will look like, there's a couple rules you need to know first. First of all, we're going to go by the number one rule of all classes must begin at the bell. They have to start on time. Again, we want students to come into the building having those time frames, regimented in their head. Rule number 2, students will follow the same bell schedule every day as they would in the building. Again, we need them to cycle through those 8 periods a day. The only kind of change there is going to be between that A-Day, B-Day schedule for the Unified Arts. Rule number 3, when you're looking at this schedule in particular, is that this schedule only addresses synchronous learning. When you see a blank box, that represents the asynchronous learning. And that still means that the student would be working on something for your class during that class period. It just means that you're not necessarily going to be live in a Google Meet session with them that day. Rules number 4 and 5 should make the synchronous learning piece the most manageable for you and the students and the parents. We know that if all the students were to log in and be live on Google Meets with their teachers every day, that's nearly 6 to 8 hours of live Zoom meetings. We know as adults that that's exhausting for us. So we're going to try and break it up to be certain subjects on certain days. So rule number 4 is that English and language arts, foreign language, and science subjects, these contents are going to be doing the synchronous learning on Mondays and Wednesdays. You can think of them as A days, you can think of those as their synchronous days, okay? Rule number 5, math, computer science, and social studies, those courses, those contents will be live on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And you could think of those maybe as B days if that makes it easier. Unified Arts, this is rule number 6, meets on the regular A-Day, B-Day schedule, with all Monday and Wednesdays being A days and all Tuesdays and Thursdays being B days. So I'll say that again. English and language arts, foreign language, and science are on Mondays and Wednesdays. Math, computer science, and social studies are all on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then Unified Arts meets on the regular A-Day, B-Day schedule, with all Monday, Wednesdays being A-Days and all Tuesday, Thursdays being B-Days. Fridays are asynchronous learning across the board, and that allows for teachers to pull for small groups and interventions as necessary, and for us to do any staff-wide PD or anything that we need to do to get ready for the following week. So let's take a look at the schedule. Here's the sample schedule for the student Merlin. Note, this is a student's sample schedule for their classes. We can't determine one set schedule across the board for every student because every student has a different schedule across every grade level. So this is just an idea of what it might look like for one student. First and foremost, I want to clarify about Don, Scott, and Renee's presentation. We talked about it as an admin since most of those 5 modules go over some things that teachers would normally discuss during homeroom anyway. We're going to say that those 5 modules need to be covered in homeroom. And if they bleed into your first period a little bit during that first week, that's okay. But we want those to be covered in homeroom as normal, right? Those 5 modules, if you click here, you'll see them pop up in Mr. Holloway's presentation. They go over Google Meets, logging into Schoology and Clever, student services, Schoology discussions, Schoology and Google, and Schoology assessments. So it breaks down all those necessary pieces for our virtual learning aspects this fall. So that's all going to be covered during homeroom from 7:20 to 7:37 every day next week. Then, this student schedule, they have English and Language Arts, period 1, from 7:37 to 8:22 a.m. So they're in 8th grade schedule, right? So they have that first 45 minutes of maybe accelerated English and Language Arts. They're going to be synchronous with their English and Language Arts teachers on Mondays and Wednesdays. So on Monday, you can see that their English and Language Arts lesson is synchronous. But on Tuesday, it's going to be asynchronous. That doesn't mean that the teacher isn't going to check in or post something for them to do, maybe a screencast. It just means that they're not going to be meeting with them live, okay? Period 2, they go to Spanish, or if this was like a 6th or 7th grade student, they have that second block for Lit Lab. They're going to need to check in during that Spanish or Lit Lab class. So yes, if you are an English and Language Arts teacher and your synchronous session from session 1 is only 30 minutes, you might give the students 15 minutes for a break, 15 minutes to go work on an assignment, but you need to be clear in your expectation that students, you need to log back in at the beginning of period 2 for our Lit Lab lesson. Okay? Moving on down Monday, period 3, that student has science. That session is going to be synchronous. Again, so the rule of thumb, according to up here, is that English Language Arts, Foreign Language, and Science on Mondays and Wednesdays. So again, their Monday mornings look pretty heavy. But if you take a look at periods 4 and 5, period 4 is social studies. They're not synchronous with social studies until Tuesdays. That doesn't mean that they're not working on social studies. Again, that social studies teacher is going to have an asynchronous assignment that they posted in Schoology. It might be an email or a post that they send out for their students to work on something during that day. Period 5 has lunch. Then they have their Unified Arts. Again, this is going to be really important that we follow the A-Day, B-Day schedule. If Mondays are A-Day and I have strings on my A-Day, then that 30 minutes is going to be synchronous. However, Tuesdays are B-days. That means I'm going to be doing my synchronous learning with my PE course. It doesn't affect you as the teacher in terms of what content you're preparing for that student necessarily, because again, you're preparing that same lesson for both your A-Day and B-Day students for those 2 days before moving on to the next lesson for your Wednesday, Thursday lesson for those A-Day, B-Days. All right, math. Again, I don't have a synchronous math lesson on Mondays because my math synchronous lesson is on Tuesdays. And same with that computer science, or if I teach a block period of math, such as in 6th or 7th grade, I, on Tuesday, would teach the second half of that math class. So I might give students a break after my first 30 minutes. I might tell them to go work on something independently, but then I'm going to call them back for that second part of that block for the second part of my synchronous session on Tuesdays. So again, We're going to follow the schedule as normal, right? We want our students to transition into the building feeling as normalized to the schedule as possible. The only thing we're changing up is that we're only assigning synchronous sessions of classes for certain days. So again, English Language Arts, Foreign Language, and Science would be on Mondays and Wednesdays. Math, Computer Science, and Social Studies are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Unified Arts meets on the regular A-Day, B-Day schedule with Monday, Wednesdays as the A days and Tuesdays, Thursdays as the B days, and then Fridays across the board are asynchronous for small groups and interventions for any of the students that need that extra support or you want to meet with, and they're also for staff PD. I hope that answers some questions or alleviates some anxiety so you can start to prepare and plan your lessons for next week. Again, I want to clarify that the 5 modules that you heard about in this morning's presentation from Dawn, those are going to be covered in Homeroom, and you do need to go through with the modules with your students. I know that there was some talk about, oh, do the students complete these independently? Unfortunately, a lot of these things are going to be things that I wouldn't necessarily want my students to try without me first. You know, I'm new to Google Meets, they're new to Google Meets. So even though the modules are built in Schoology, and yes, maybe a high school student could complete it independently, I would still want to lead the students through the PowerPoint presentation before I ask them to do anything independently on their own. Okay? I hope this makes sense. We're going to talk more about the schedule, we're going to talk more about attendance and all these things and what it's going to look like hopefully in your team meetings, in your department meetings, in your PLC meetings, and please feel free to ask us questions. We know it's a lot, we know it's very different. It's going to be different and a lot for all of us for a while. The best thing that I can say or recommend is to just be patient, know that we're all here to support each other, we're all in this together. It's a really different school year, but we're going to get through it. It's best to keep that positive attitude and just try and make the best of a situation and make that action plan to move forward. So now that you know what your schedule is, you can start to plan for when you're going to do your synchronous sessions versus your asynchronous sessions the following week. And remember, those first 2 weeks are really all about just getting to know your kids, doing some icebreakers, and then getting them to kind of be familiar with the different technology pieces that they'll be using for virtual learning. So reinforcing what you teach in those 5 modules in Homeroom. You're going to be applying some of those things to maybe your first week and second week lessons when you're doing your synchronous and asynchronous learning. All right. That was a lot of information. If you need to go back and watch parts of this video, that's totally fine. I hope it made sense. Yeah. Let us know if you have questions. We're here to support you.